What's going on, This is Frogling here. Welcome back to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to edit your Valorant montages just like popular Valorant YouTuber Zishu. Now, I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, you already know who Zishu is, but in case you don't, he posts awesome highlight montages of his Valorant clips with some sick editing, similar to other YouTubers like Ladiff and Cjaiye. I'm sure you've seen them all over YouTube. So if you want to see me cover how to edit like any of these other YouTubers, let me know by dropping a comment down below and I'll be sure to do that for you. Just before we get started, I want to mention that I'm not trying to rip off Zishu here. He does have a service where you can book one of his editors to make a montage for you, so feel free to check that out if you want to. However, I do know a lot of people either don't want to pay or they want to make their montages themselves, so in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to do that. I will be editing in Adobe After Effects, although this video is more to serve as a method of doing things rather than being software specific, so you can definitely still follow along regardless of which editing software you're using. Just some of the tools and settings might be called something slightly different depending on which software you're using, but I'll do my best to explain it all. So let's get into it. In my case, I'm going to open up Adobe After Effects. You can see here that I've already got the project from the intro that you saw at the beginning of this video open. If you want to download this project file for that intro edit or the project files from the rest of this tutorial, they'll all be available over on my Patreon. You can check that out with the link in the description. As well as if you want to edit in Adobe After Effects, I'll leave a link in the description to where you can go and download that. So all I'm going to do is create a new project. So you also probably open up something like this. You're just going to want to come over and hit new project, and it'll open you onto a screen like this. And just come up to File, Save As. Choose when you want to save it and give it a name. So I'm going to call mine Zishu Tutorial, and I'm going to hit save and create a new composition. This could be called a sequence or timeline depending on which software you're using. I'm just going to give it a name. This will be main edit, and you're going to set the resolution to match your clips. So if your clips are recorded in 1920 by 1080, set it to 1920 by 1080. I recorded mine in 2560 by 1440, so I'm going to leave it like that, as well as set the frame rate to 60 FPS. Zishu's videos are at 60 FPS. And I'm going to set the duration to be about a minute. We can always reduce or extend that later on, but I think a minute is a good starting point. And I'm going to hit OK. Now comes the first and arguably the most important step of creating any gaming montage, and that is picking the music. Now you'll notice Zishu uses a lot of mainstream music in his videos, and you'll see I did the same for the intro of this video too. Now you must be thinking, how did I do that without risking a copyright strike or losing monetization? Well, that wasn't a problem thanks to this video's sponsor, Licked. Licked is an amazing service with an extensive catalogue of over 1 million chart songs for you to choose from for use in your videos and edits completely copyright claim free. Click the link at the top of the description and start browsing their playlist to find the perfect song for your edit. Licked makes it super easy to find exactly what you're looking for with their list of categorized playlists to suit any video. Perhaps it's something like this, or this, or even this. Every song you've heard or yet to hear in this video I got from Licked. Not only do they offer mainstream chart-topping music, but also have a great stock music catalogue including over 100,000 tracks with unlimited use across any social media platform, all for just one subscription. So don't get your videos claimed, sign up to Licked with my link for 14 days free stock music and 50% off your first mainstream chart track. Okay, so now you've downloaded your song from Licked, you're going to want to drag and drop it into your project. So in my case, that is No Lie by Sean Paul and Dua Lipa, which is what I used in the intro of this video. And now it's in your project bin or wherever audio clips are stored in your editing software, you're going to drag and drop it onto your timeline. Now what we're going to do is add markers to our song layer so that we know where the beats are so we can sync our clips to it. So in After Effects, I'm going to double tap L whilst having the song selected, and that's going to bring up the waveform. You should be able to access some form of waveform in any editing software if it's not already there by default. And now what I'm going to do is listen through to it and decide which portion of it I actually want to use in my edit. Okay, so I've decided I want to use this kind of area, so I'm just going to cut my clip about here. So in After Effects, the shortcut for that is Ctrl-Shift-D. In Premiere Pro, you press the C key to bring up the razor tool, and then you cut your layer with the mouse. Hopefully you should already know how to cut a layer in your editing software of choice. And now I'm going to delete this portion of the clip that I don't want and snap my song layer to the start of my composition. So now if I zoom in, I'll decide where I want the clip to end. So I've decided I want it to end here. So much the same, I'm going to Ctrl-Shift-D and delete that. And now what I'm going to do with the help of markers is mark where each of the beats are. So in the waveform, you can see where these peaks are, and a lot of the time where these peaks are is where the beats are going to be. But depending on your song, you will need to listen through to it and decide for yourself which portions you want to sync to. To add a marker in After Effects, you press the asterisk key on your numpad, just like this, and you'll see we'll add this little marker here. If you don't want to add them to your song layer, if you don't think you'll be moving it around, then you can press the key without having the layer selected, and it will add a marker to the entire composition. That way, if you have lots of layers, you can scroll up and down, and they'll still be visible at the top. However, if you do think you're prone to moving the song layer around, then you should definitely apply the markers to the song layer, otherwise the markers of the song will be out of sync. So now all I'm going to do is listen through to the song, and I'm going to tap the marker key in time with each of the beats.
Feel your eyes, they all over me. Don't be shy, take control of me. Get the vibe, it's gonna be lit tonight. No lie.
And I think for me, that's probably about enough. This song is pretty simple. It has a really simple pattern. Certain songs may be a bit more difficult. As long as you get it roughly accurate, it should be good enough. Again, you can always use the waveforms down here to help you decide where the beat should be. A trick you can do is add a bass and treble adjustment. Again, this is another pretty universal effect, and all you're going to want to do is drag the treble down as far as it will go and increase the bass as high as it will go. And now you'll have a really bass boosted version of whichever song you're using. And although it will sound terrible, it should hopefully make the beats a bit more prominent so it's easier to mark to. So I'll show you what this sounds like.
Feel your eyes, they all over me. Don't be shy, take control of me.
And you'll see my markers are pretty much always on the beat. And now we're done with our song. So the next step is to import the clips you're going to be using. So I'm going to just import one at a time. And I'm going to start by importing this operator clip. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into my project and onto my timeline. And I'm just going to scroll through and find the portion of the clip that I want to use. So this was the last clip in the edit you saw at the beginning of this video. Around here, you can see I get the kill here. So I'm just going to go back so that I have a good portion of the clip to work with beforehand. And I'm going to cut the layer there, get the kill there, and I'll leave sort of up to about there and cut the end of that off. Now what you're going to want to do is go through your clip and find exactly the moment you get the kill. So if you're using a scoped weapon, the point you're going to want to mark is the frame you come out of the scope. So in my case, that's here. If you're using a rifle or something like that, time it to the point that the kill appears in the kill feed. So I come out of the scope on this frame. I'm going to add a marker to my clip so I can align that with one of the markers in my song. So I'm going to use the first marker on my song, and I'm going to drag across my clip so that the marker lines up with that, and that way on the first beat of the song I get the first kill. Now what you're going to want to do, and what Zishu does a lot, is slow down the part of the clip after the kill. So you'll notice in a lot of his videos he'll get a kill and it will go to super slow motion, whether that's when he's pulling out a knife or cocking back the shotgun or reloading or anything like that. Now where you slow down the clip is going to be quite clip specific. A lot of the time you can just cut it exactly where the kill is and then just slow this second portion, but because I have this motion where I sort of spin to the right, I'm going to time it with when the knife pull out happens. So I'm going to cut it about here, and then this second portion of the clip I'm going to slow. So in After Effects, select your clip, right click, select time, and then time stretch. And you'll see the stretch factor here. 100% is its original speed. 50 would be double speed, so twice as quick. 200 would be half speed. So we're going to go for about 300 on that. So I'm going to preview what that looks like. And this is what it looks like. You'll see it is slightly choppy because we've slowed it down, so our 60 FPS clip is obviously dropping frames. But what we can do to fix that is if we come over here on the left side and double click this box here, you'll see this is the frame blending setting. So we've just set it to pixel motion frame blending. And what that's going to essentially do is create new frames where previous ones were lost. I did make a video recently about how to make super smooth videos and using an AI that turns your 60 FPS clips into 240 FPS clips. That way we can slow them down without dropping any frames and we don't need to use any frame blending. I'll leave a link to that as the card in the top right corner as well as in the description. As well as this is a very simple way of syncing and slowing down clips. I have two other videos, one for After Effects and one for Premiere Pro, which both go into a lot more detail about time remapping and syncing. Again, I'll leave links to them down in the description as well, so feel free to go check them out if you want more information about this and how to make it look as smooth as possible. But now that we've done that, this is essentially what the clip looks like. And you can see it slows down when you bring the knife out, just like it would in Zishu's video. Now what we're going to do is add some kill effects. So we're going to add a blur, a glow, you can add a shake if you want to. I'm just going to keep it pretty basic in this video, but I do have a ton of other videos with effects and things that you can apply as well, so feel free to go check out any of those. To do this, I'm going to right click over in my timeline, new adjustment layer, and drag my song layer to the top. I like to have the markers visible at the top at all times. Again, most software will have some form of adjustment layer. It might not be called the same thing, but essentially all an adjustment layer is an invisible layer. You can see if we hide it, nothing happens. It's just a layer that we can apply effects to, and the effects that we apply to that layer will apply to every layer beneath it, just like an adjustment layer in Photoshop, for example. If for whatever reason your software doesn't have this, then you can just apply the effects to the clip directly. You'll get the same result. This is just better if you want to copy and paste the same adjustment layer and use it multiple times. That way you can save some time. So I'm just going to shrink down my adjustment layer to just cover above where my clip is, because we really don't need it to span over the entire montage. And now I'm going to zoom in, make sure that I'm exactly on the frame where we get the kill that also lines up with the song. And I'm going to come over to effects and presets, and I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment, drag and drop that onto my adjustment layer. I'm going to go back 1 frame before we get the kill, keyframe the brightness by clicking the stopwatch up here, go forward 1 frame, and I'm going to increase the brightness to 100. If you double tap U when the adjustment layer is selected, you'll be able to see the keyframes in the timeline. So we go from a value of 0 on the brightness to 100, and I'm just going to drag a bit further into the clip, so about here maybe, and I'm going to keyframe our brightness back to 0. That way you'll see it will fade out over time after we get the kill. Now I'm going to also add a lens blur, so you can see blur and sharpen, camera lens blur, drag and drop that on as well. Go back 1 frame just like we did with the brightness, set the blur radius to 0 and keyframe that, go forward 1 frame, and we're just going to drag up our blur radius to something like this. 16 is good. Again, select your adjustment layer, you can double tap U to bring up all the keyframes, and I'm going to go to where our brightness adjustment ended, and I'm going to keyframe our blur radius to 0 as well. So that way now if I play our clip, you'll see on the first beat of the song we'll get the kill, and there'll be a flash and a blur just like in Zishu's videos. And there you go, that is like the super watered down basics to making a Zishu style montage. Slow motion with a blur and a brightness adjustment. You can add, again, you can add some shake if you want to. I have plenty of other tutorials about different effects that you can add. Just make sure that you switch it up slightly, even if for example, you know, you don't use a brightness adjustment and you use exposure instead or something like that, just to add a little bit of variety so that you're not using the same effects over and over again. Whereas you could use glow instead, for example, add some glow like this maybe. It really depends on your personal preferences. You just keyframe it exactly the same as we did with the brightness and contrast. If you need any more ideas for any effects to add to your montages, I'll put on screen 6 videos that I made giving my top 15 effects to add to your montages in both Adobe After Effects and Premiere Pro. Those videos will be linked down in the description, so feel free to go check them out. And yeah, essentially to start with, that's all you're going to want to do. Mark your song layer on the beats, mark your clips on the kills, match them up, add some effects on the kills, and then rinse and repeat for every beat of the song. Now you don't necessarily want to have a kill on every beat of the song. You could have a transition on a beat instead, or some other movement, or you could skip every few beats depending on the kind of song that you're using, but essentially that's the gist of it. If you need any montage transitions, I'll also leave links to a couple free packs that I've made in the description as well. Now I'm going to show you how to create 3 of Zishu's most common effects used in his videos. So for the first one, I'm going to drag and drop a different clip into my composition, and you'll see this is a clip that I've used. You'll recognize it from the intro of the video. And now what you're going to want to do, again, just like with the previous one, find where you get the kill. So when I come out of the scope, I'm going to cut the clip here, right click, time stretch, and I'm going to do this one by 250, as well as add the pixel motion frame blending so that it's smooth. And I'm going to add a new adjustment layer above my clip like I did with the previous one, and I'm going to trim it down to start when I get the kill. Now you can use this instead of the brightness and blur adjustments that we used before, or you could use it with it. It's really up to you. Because I've already shown you how to do that, I'm just going to show you how to create this effect on its own, but of course feel free to layer them. And the first effect that we're going to want to add to our adjustment layer is called Find Edges. You'll see it over here. I'm going to drag and drop that onto the adjustment layer, and it's going to do something like this. Now in the effect controls, I'm going to invert it so that now our clip looks like this. Now in Zishu's videos, he doesn't tend to have random colors like this. His lines would all be one color. So to do that, we're going to use the effect Tritone. You'll see here under color correction, Tritone, drag and drop that on the adjustment layer as well. And you'll see it's basically just made it all one color. Now what you can do is come up to the Tritone effect and basically pick which color you want your effect to be. So I'm going to go with like a bright blue like this. And then you're going to want to come up to the highlights as well and pick a lighter shade of whichever color you used. So I'm going to go with a light blue like that. Might actually make the mid-tone slightly lighter as well, something sort of like that. And now finally you're going to want to add the glow effect as well. So under stylize, you should see glow, drag and drop that onto your adjustment layer as well. And the settings I'm going to use is a glow threshold of 30 and a glow radius of 50, and you can see what that looks like. Again, feel free to mess around with any of these settings to create an effect that you're happy with. And now, much like with the brightness and blur adjustments, we can keyframe these to dissipate over time. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit, and I'm going to keyframe blend with original under find edges, blend with original under tritone, and I'm also going to keyframe the glow intensity. Double tap U on your keyboard with the adjustment layer selected. Again, you can see the keyframes. I'm going to go forward in time to about here, and I'm going to increase blend with original on the find edges to 100, blend with original on the tritone to 100, and I'm going to decrease the glow intensity to 0. And now you'll see over time the effect disappears just like this. In the intro video, I just used a transition between this clip and the next clip rather than having it decrease like this, but I just thought I'd show you how to do it anyway in case you wanted to. Now for the next common effect that's used in Zishu's videos, I'm going to show you how to mask or rotoscope out elements of the video and manipulate them individually. Now predominantly Zishu uses these for transitions, but really you can do whatever you want with them. So in this case, I'm also going to do it as a transition. So I've got this clip below, which is the one that you're seeing currently. So if I hide it, you see that's the clip that's underneath. And I have this other clip above where the SOVA is. So in this case, I want to cut out the SOVA so that I can animate it coming in from the left, right, up, down, scale it in, that sort of thing. I have another video where I show you how to do a first person transition effect where I cut out Sage's hands during her ult animation and have them appear on top of another clip before it fades into the second clip. I'll put an example of what that looks like on screen. If you want to check out that video, card in the top right corner or down in the description, you can go learn how to do that. But for this video, I'm just going to use masking just to keep it simple. So I'm going to duplicate our layer here by pressing Ctrl D, and I'm going to right click, time, freeze frame, and you see now this entire clip here is just this single frame. So I'm going to go one frame ahead and cut the clip there and discard the rest of it. So you'll see we have this freeze up until I want to transition into the scope. So on the final frame of this clip right here, I'm going to select it, zoom in the viewport, and I'm going to come up to the pen tool in the toolbar up here. Alternatively, you can press G, and essentially I'm just going to start cutting around this character. I'm going to do it pretty roughly, but for your montage you may want to be a bit more careful with it. You can pan the screen around by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging your mouse, as well as scrolling in and out to zoom. Again, most software will have this feature. It's just basically creating a mask. And there we go, we have SOVA masked out. Now you won't notice much of a difference initially because the clip underneath is identical. So if I hide the clip underneath, you'll see we now have this SOVA layer that we can drag around and do pretty much whatever we want with, and that is frozen in time just like that. So we put it back to the original position and unhide the layer beneath. I'm just going to go back and discard the beginning of the clip beneath so that the SOVA transitions perfectly into the second clip, just like this. You see, it lines up perfectly. Now what you can do with this is select the masked out clip, press P on your keyboard to set a position keyframe, just click the stopwatch over here, and this keyframe guarantees that on the last frame before the transition, SOVA will be in the correct position, so regardless of whether we move them over here, by the time we get to the point in time where the transition is, it'll be in the right place. Now what you can do with this is animate it doing pretty much whatever you want. So if you want to scale it, for example, or in my case, I think I'll just have it appear off the left side of the screen, and I'm just going to select the mask layer and I'm just going to click and drag the SOVA off this corner like this. And now you'll see when you do this, you'll get this sort of line showing you where the animation happens. So you can see here, and it transitions pretty much perfectly. You can manipulate these handles. You'll see these big circles at the beginning and end of the line to create any sort of shape you want. So in my case, I'm just going to make this sort of arc, and you'll see SOVA will follow this arc and jump straight into our next clip, just like that. So if I play that full speed, this is what it looks like. It just flies into the frame. Now you can control how this motion happens by pressing F9, then select both the keyframes, right click on position and hit separate dimensions. Select the keyframes on the axis that you want to manipulate, go into the graph editor and make sure you are in value graph, not speed graph. Go into value graph, and then you can manipulate this graph to make the transition faster or slower, as well as mess with the path that it takes. And now for the final common effect you'll see in Zishu montages, I'm going to show you a scope effect that you can use in your montages. Now to create this effect, right click on your timeline, make a new solid. You're going to want to make this a black solid. I'm just going to call it black. Make sure that the width and height is enough to cover your frame. In my case it is, so I'm just going to hit OK, and you'll see we have this black solid above our clip. Now what I'm going to do is hide that layer so that we can actually see the clip below, and I'm going to go to the point where we are scoped in. Now with the black solid selected, it should be invisible, but with it selected, come up to the top, select the ellipse tool. If you can't see it, if it's on rectangle, click and hold, go to ellipse. With the ellipse tool selected, hold shift to scale it evenly, and we're going to want to try and cover the scope as best we can. Once we've got the mask there, we can press Ctrl T, and that will let us move it around and scale it if need be. So I'm going to just scale it down slightly. When you're scaling, make sure to click and then hold shift so that we scale, otherwise you'll end up with weird shapes like this. And I'm going to position this just perfectly, something like that, so that it lines up with our scope. And now when we enable the black layer again, it should look something like this. We select our solid and press M on the keyboard. It will bring up the mask properties. We can click invert. Alternatively, what I would do is change the mask to subtract. And now we can see we've got this black circle around where our scope is. Now I'm going to go to the point just before we shoot, which is right here. I'm going to mark it on a clip so I know where that is by pressing the asterisk key on our numpad. And I'm going to keyframe the mask expansion on the solid layer. Now I'm going to go back to where I want the animation to start. So So it's going to be when we scope in just like this. And I'm going to increase the mask expansion until it disappears from our viewport. And now you'll see if I drag through, we have this nice animation of the scope coming in, and then we can just cut the rest of the layer off afterwards so that it's no longer seen. And essentially that is a quick and dirty scope effect, which you will see quite a lot in Zishu's videos with slight variations here or there. If you want more details about different scope effects you can do, then check out the video in the top right corner right now where I go over 3 easy scope effects for your Valorant montages, including something very similar to this one. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my video on how to edit like Zishu. Now you've got your montage made, you're probably going to need a thumbnail, so check out the video on the end card where I show you how to make thumbnails like Valorant montage YouTubers like Zishu and Cjaiye, as well as check out Licked with my link in the description. Using that link you'll be able to get 14 days free stock music as well as 50% off your first mainstream chart track license. If you did enjoy this video or found it helpful, please slap a like on it as well as subscribe. Leave a comment with any other videos you'd like to see on the channel. Follow me on all my other social media. Thank you for watching and I will catch you in the next one.